The Prime Minister ought to have gone to China instead of going to South Africa in a proactive way to speak with the Chinese government about the concerns the Bahamas would have, whether on the labor component or any other aspect of it. And he knows that the Ismailians wrote him a letter in 2008 asking for some kind of help and assistance from the government in dealing with the China import or export-import bank. So this is not a new thing. The government was aware that he was trying then to do some deals from 2008 with them. I think I got a copy of that letter. The government of the Bahamas is faced, ladies and gentlemen, with an extraordinary set of circumstances. The Prime Minister found it necessary to say that the Bahama development is no savior. Well, we would position ourselves no differently in the sense that countries ought not to see developments as the be-all and end-all of a country, no matter how valuable that investment is. But it's the only thing he has going. We left in place Albany for him, and he spoke well of Albany. That is an ongoing construction. We left in place the Lyndon Pilling International Airport, he spoke of it. And we left the Bahama position, which we said at the time was mishandled, but now going forward, we have to look at what the country needs now. And so, in my coming here, I just wanted to be able to say this to you. Under the mode of separation of powers, the executive of the country is empowered to make decisions on behalf of the country, immigration decisions, other decisions. The opposition is the beneficiary of their consideration because we are then told what they're doing. The government has at its disposal an array of experts, whether through people in the service, public service, or people they hire. It's very difficult for the opposition to be able to bring to bear that kind of expertise in our consideration of a subject, and that is why there's a difference between the executive and the legislature. Our parliament does not give us access, like some parliaments, to that kind of expertise. And so there is no doubt whatsoever that this bringing the resolution to Parliament was a cynical effort by Hubert Ingraham to get the PLP to share the responsibility of whatever political fallout that comes from having 8,000 work permits. Nothing to do with nothing other than politics. If Hubert Ingraham, who has known me for all of his professional life, could walk into a press conference as a prime minister who has to have discussions with the leader of the opposition and attempt to embarrass me in the way he did and hold out some innuendo about my public and private positions being in conflict, then dog eat your lunch. God knows what you got to expect from this. I mean, it begs the question as to fitness to be in office. We decided we would come to Parliament. We are leaders, and we've exercised a leadership position throughout this matter. I called the Prime Minister and asked the Prime Minister whether some of my colleagues could meet with some of his colleagues so that we could minimize the area in which there is conflict between the parties. A meeting took place where the deputy leader, Mr. Davis, the leader of opposition business, Mr. Wilson, and the chair of the committee that I appointed, Dr. Nottage, met in the offices of Tommy Tenquest with Tommy Tenquest, Dion Folks, and Desmond Bannister on behalf of the F&M. All with a view to exercising the leadership that we think we should bring to bear on this, because we had made a decision to bring about a defining development in the country that would employ thousands of people, and a development on the scale that is 3 times the size and more of Christie. That's what we decided to do. And so I want to just say, therefore, that in all of the decision-making we made, we tried to support our decision-making by the best experts, whether from the Bahamas or abroad. And all of our decisions were motivated by serving the best interests of the Bahamian people. And without doubt, our decision is linked with respect to the hotel to what is right for the country in terms of being able to be managed efficiently, to be managed in a way that will sustain employment. And even though, now one final point, I don't know why the Prime Minister decided, he's not an expert, he never was, to arrogate unto himself commentary about whether or not a Bahama development could coexist with a Curzon development. The Curzoners had made that point to me. I'm an intelligent person. I'm Prime Minister who bears the responsibility well. I caused a study to be made that he should have available to him by a company called HVS that we employed, a major consulting company, to examine whether or not we ought to give subsidies and further concessions to Curzon. That study came up with a result. Using Orlando, using Nevada, using other research developments, and said, yes, they can coexist. And let me make this other point to you. The reason why the PLP put into the agreement in 2005, you must have world-class operators who are equity holders, is that people who are world-class operators don't make stupid investments. And they don't make investments they're going to walk away from, and they cannot manage. So when you saw Harris deciding to come here through Caesars, they knew they could make money. They knew on the basis of what was happening over Paradise Island, and yes, there are peaks and valleys in economic times, but once those things were there, they were satisfied. So we were satisfied that we were putting the Bahamas in a position where they would have world-class operators in partnership with Bahama, people who knew the way of doing things, and people who would not walk away from the investment because of that. And so that's where we were on that. And so from my point of view, therefore, we felt good about it. And we thought we would go into Parliament yesterday to discuss our views very frankly with the government, with a view to saying we have been trying from the outset to see how best to make this development work. Because at the end of the day, the government of Bahamas ought to be interested in leading the way and in having a dynamic program. Now, our understanding was, because we had to work at arriving at it, that Bahama would have Bahamians working on the core project. And in fact, in the construction agreement, there's a provision in there where the construction manager is empowered to work specifically with Bahamian small contractors to involve them in a meaningful way in the project.